Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're zeroing in on something really significant happening in New York City. The upcoming 2025 Pot Parade.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be quite an event.
Exactly. And if you're looking to understand why this isn't just another, street fair, you've definitely come to the right place.
hmm There's a lot of history packed into it.
For sure. This parade is charged with history. And its return to its roots, well, that makes it particularly noteworthy. We've sifted through historical accounts, news reports, really trying to bring you the core of this story.
A long and pretty winding story, actually.
It is. So, our mission, to uncover what makes the 2025 parade so exciting by exploring its long, fascinating journey, and importantly, the pivotal individuals who shaped it. Okay, let's unpack this.
It's really remarkable, isn't it, to consider that what might seem like just a contemporary event actually has these deep ties back to the counterculture movements of the mid-20th century.
Totally.
Understanding those origins, I think, it really illuminates the significance of this 2025 revival.
Absolutely. So let's rewind. Back to the mid-1960s. Our sources, they really highlight a key figure in those very early days, the poet Allen Ginsberg.
Ah, Ginsberg.
Right. Many know him for his powerful verse, but he was also a really dedicated activist for marijuana legalization. He even founded an organization called Lamar Legalized Marijuana.
Omar, yeah, I remember reading about that.
And he was actively picketing places like the Jefferson Market Courthouse and Christodora House in the East Village. It's pretty striking seeing such a prominent literary voice engaged in this early protest. Why was his involvement, you think, so impactful beyond just like lending an artistic flair?
Well, Ginsberg's participation was just crucial. It brought a kind of intellectual credibility, and visibility to a cause that was often dismissed as fringe.
Right, just dismissed.
Yeah. As this respected figure in literary and countercultural circles, his advocacy helped legitimize the whole conversation around marijuana legalization, and it connected it to broader themes: personal freedom, challenging societal norms. His arguments often linked drug laws to censorship, the suppression of consciousness. That really resonated with a segment of society already questioning authority.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so moving into the late 60s, the East Village. It really became this cultural explosion, didn't it? Especially around Tompkins Square Park.
Oh, definitely. The heart of it all.
I mean, imagine the energy. Bands like the Grateful Dead, Jimi Hendrix, Santana, Charles Mingus, the Fugs, playing right there in the park.
Incredible lineups.
And within this really vibrant scene, a number of influential figures emerged. Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, Dana Beal, A.J. Weberman, and Jim Forat. These names, they became central to the whole counterculture movement.
What was it about that particular time and place that fostered such, radical ideas?
Tompkins Square Park in the late 60s.
Yeah.
It was just this unique confluence of factors, wasn't it? You had this dense urban environment attracting artists, musicians, activists.
A real melting pot. Exactly. The Vietnam War was escalating, civil rights movements were gaining momentum, and there was this widespread questioning of traditional values. The concerts, they provided a space for collective expression, a feeling of community for those feeling alienated from the mainstream.
Yeah.
It was just fertile ground for new social and political ideas to take root, and for individuals like the ones you mentioned to connect and galvanize people.
And within that ferment, something significant happened regarding marijuana. Our sources point to an unofficial smoke-in at a Grateful Dead concert in Tompkins Square Park back in '67.
The legendary one, yeah.
Apparently, Dana Beal was instrumental, bringing and distributing marijuana. There's even an account of him, tossing joints from the stage.
He was definitely hands-on.
How did this kind of informal event pave the way for more organized protests later on?
Well, that '67 event, while it seemed spontaneous, it was actually a pretty powerful act of collective defiance. It normalized cannabis use within that community, the counterculture community.
Made it visible.
Right. And it demonstrated the potential for public gatherings to challenge existing laws. Beal's actions weren't just about, recreational fun. They were a deliberate challenge to prohibition. Very public. This kind of shared experience helped build solidarity among marijuana users and laid the groundwork for more organized political action, showed them they weren't alone.
Right. And out of this environment, the Yippies were born. In the East Village around the end of '67.
The Youth International Party.
This is a movement that so cleverly merged cultural rebellion with political revolution. It wasn't just about protest. It was about performance, making a statement. What was the core philosophy behind this really unique approach to activism?
The Yippies, they believed the personal was political, and that traditional forms of protest, often ineffective against these entrenched power structures.
So they needed something different.
Exactly. They embraced theatricality, humor, even absurdity as tools to disrupt the status quo and capture public attention. Their philosophy was rooted in the idea that challenging cultural norms and political action weren't separate things.
They went hand in hand.
Complementary ways to bring about social change. They really understood the power of media and spectacle in shaping public perception, and they used it, to their advantage.
And their confrontations with the Chicago police, 1968, the Democratic National Convention, that really propelled them into the national consciousness, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Chicago 68 was pivotal.
Despite the violence, the media coverage, and the subsequent trial, arguably, it helped solidify their movement. How did an event like that, though negative in so many ways, actually contribute to their growth?
Well, the events in Chicago, while brutal, they exposed these deep divisions in American society at the time. The Yippies' clash with the police became a symbol of the counterculture struggle against what they saw as an oppressive establishment.
A visible symbol.
Yes. The media attention, even if it was initially critical, forced a broader public to confront the issues the Yippies were raising in the war, social inequalities. The trial later just amplified their message, created this narrative of resistance that resonated with so many young people. It led to Yippie chapters popping up across the country.
And as the 70s began, their commitment to cannabis legalization stayed strong, right alongside these other political aims, like ending the Vietnam War, racial justice, corporate issues.
Yeah, it was always part of their platform.
Our sources describe a July 4th, 1970 protest in D.C. called Honor America Day. Yippies participated by openly smoking marijuana.
A direct challenge.
When they tried to take the stage, things escalated. Tear gas.
Yeah.
What did this kind of direct action signify about their approach?
That D.C. protest, it really demonstrated the Yippies' willingness to directly challenge authority, use provocative tactics to draw attention to their demands. The open marijuana use was deliberate civil disobedience.
Right.
It was intended to highlight what they saw as the absurdity and injustice of cannabis prohibition, trying to take the stage. That was a way of directly confronting the mainstream narrative of Honor America Day with their own countercultural message.
This leads us to a really key moment. The first official July 4th smoke-in on the Capitol Mall in 1971.
That became an annual tradition, yeah.
And we also saw other marijuana-focused events emerging around then, like the Free John Sinclair rally in Michigan.
Right, John Lennon played that one.
And the founding of Hash Bash, also in Michigan. It seems like the movement was really solidifying its presence.
Exactly. These events signify a growing sense of organization, a strategic focus on cannabis legalization as a specific political goal. The annual smoke-in on the mall provided this consistent platform for activists to gather, protest, build community around the issue. And the emergence of other regional events like Half Hour indicates it was spreading, beyond just New York and D.C.
And New York City formalized its own event in 1973, initially held on May Day, May 1st.
Or sometimes the first Saturday in May.
Right, it became known as J-Day, and later settled on that first Saturday of May. The 1973 smoke-in, interestingly, culminated in a march and protest right at the home of the U.S. Attorney General, John Mitchell.
Wow, to his house.
Yeah. That's a pretty targeted demonstration. What does that tell us about the early goals of the NYC activists?
Marching to the Attorney General's home. That was a clear attempt to directly hold those in power accountable for enforcing marijuana laws. John Mitchell was such a key figure in Nixon's tough-on-drugs policies.
The architect, really.
Yeah. So targeting his residence was this symbolic act of defiance, bringing the issue right to the doorstep of the people making and enforcing the laws. It shows a level of strategic thinking, a willingness to be confrontational.
And the NYC events continued right through the 70s. They drew thousands of attendees, even incorporated elements of counterculture like punk bands later in the decade.
Punk fits right in, doesn't it?
And connections to the Rock Against Racism movement. It seems like that Yippie influence remained really strong, blending political protests with cultural expression.
Absolutely. Integrating music and other cultural expressions was a hallmark of the Yippie approach. They understood these events could be both protest and a celebration of alternative culture.
It drew more people in.
Exactly. Attracting a wider range of participants, creating a more vibrant, engaging atmosphere. And the Rock Against Racism connection highlights the intersectionality of their activism, linking the drug prohibition fight to broader struggles against social injustice.
Then the 80s brought some changes. While maybe the massive crowds waned a bit compared to the peak 70s,
Things shifted, yeah.
the annual events persisted. There were even rumors of, like, unofficial tolerance on May Day, though arrests definitely still happened.
Right, it's still risky.
We also saw a divergence. The Rock Against Racism events sometimes separated from the more explicitly marijuana-focused marches, which then targeted various political sites around Manhattan. What do these shifts indicate about the movement's evolution during the 80s?
Well, the fluctuating attendance probably reflects a number of things. Shifting political priorities, maybe some burnout after years of activism.
Sure, that happens.
The rumors of de facto legalization on May Day, while not totally accurate, suggest a potential shift in public perception or maybe law enforcement priorities, at least informally,
Interesting.
and the separation of the RAR events from the marijuana marches. That indicates a possible strategic refocusing within the cannabis legalization movement itself,
Right.
allowed them to more directly address their specific political goals, perhaps.
The 90s saw some internal divisions. Our sources mentioned dueling smoke-ins and parades. Sounds a bit chaotic.
Yeah, factional splits can get messy in any movement.
But by the mid-90s, there was a definite resurgence in numbers. Huge rallies back in Washington Square Park.
It came roaring back.
However, the sheer size of the 95 and 96 events, we're talking tens of thousands of people
Huge numbers.
and hundreds of arrests, particularly in 96, over 300 arrests. That ultimately led to the parade being forced out of Washington Square Park.
It's interesting how success, in terms of turnout, could lead to such logistical, well, problems. Yeah, the dueling events show those internal complexities, different strategies emerging within a long-term movement. And while those huge turnouts in Washington Square Park demonstrated continued public interest, they also created massive logistical and law enforcement challenges.
Too big for the space, maybe.
Or at least too challenging for the city to manage in that specific location at that time. It underscores that delicate balance between visibility and just maintaining the ability to hold such public gatherings.
So the parade relocated down to Battery Park in Lower Manhattan. The scenery might have been impressive, Statue of Liberty views.
Different vibe, though.
Totally different vibe. Attendance dropped and arrests actually increased. It seemed like the event lost some of its original energy, its purpose, in that new spot.
Yeah, the move to Battery Park likely disrupted that established energy, the accessibility Washington Square Park had offered for so long.
Right, it wasn't the symbolic heart anymore.
Exactly. The drop in attendance, the rise in arrests. It suggests the new location just didn't resonate the same way, lacked the symbolic significance, maybe wasn't as easy to get to for everyone. It lost something.
Then in the 2000s, we saw this interesting push to globalize the event, largely driven by groups like Cures Not Wars.
Taking it international.
Yeah, they developed a unified visual identity, core demands for marches happening worldwide. And this really took off. Massive pop parades in London, Paris, Toronto, Rome, all over.
Hundreds of cities eventually.
It's almost ironic, isn't it? While the international movement was flourishing, the New York City event, the original, seemed to be kind of struggling, moving around, eventually settling in Union Square Park with a permit.
Yeah, the globalization reflects this growing international recognition of cannabis policy reform as a major issue. The success of those global events highlights the power of shared messaging, coordinated action. But the fact that the New York event, despite its historical significance, faced challenges during this time, it really underscores the need for consistent local organizing, adapting to changing circumstances. You can't neglect the roots.
But this brings us right up to the exciting news. 2025 marks a return to the roots.
Yes, back to Washington Square Park.
The pop parade is being reclaimed by some of its original founders, including the Yippies, alongside groups like ACT UP, Cures Not Wars, and Nora Mel. It's happening May 3rd.
May 3rd, got it.
And it's starting back in Washington Square Park, right at the Garibaldi Statue. It feels like a really significant moment, a full circle return.
It really does. Very symbolic.
And at the heart of this return is a name we've encountered repeatedly in our historical deep dive, Dana Beal.
Beal. He's been there from the start, hasn't he?
Absolutely. Even way back in 1971, the New York Times described Beal as a major theoretician and behind-the-scenes leader of the underground youth movement.
High praise from the Times back then.
They recognized him as a founder of radical youth groups, including the Yippies, and the organizer of numerous early pro-pot demonstrations. He wasn't just present. He was a key driving force from the very beginning. What was it about Beal that made him such an influential figure, do you think?
Well, from what the sources suggest, Beal just possessed this unique combination of, grassroots organizing skills and real intellectual vision.
The thinker and the doer.
Right. He wasn't just leading marches, he was articulating the philosophical underpinnings of the movement, connecting it to broader social and political critiques. His ability to bridge that gap between street-level activism and theoretical understanding made him super influential within the counterculture.
And his influence wasn't just acknowledged by the press. Even his fellow Yippie leaders, Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin, deeply respected his contributions.
Mm.
Hoffman famously said, "He is a unique blend of a street person and a theoretician. His writings are far more important and impressive than people like me and Jerry Rubin."
Wow, that's incredible praise coming from Hoffman.
And Rubin echoed that, stating Beale's writings were a strong force in helping us understand who we are. That's incredibly high praise from two of the most visible figures of the entire era.
Those quotes, they truly highlight the depth of Beale's impact, don't they? Hoffman and Rubin, they were the public faces, right? But they recognized the crucial role Beale played behind the scenes, shaping the movement's ideology, giving intellectual substance to their actions.
Yeah.
It really underscores the idea that successful social movements often rely on both those charismatic public figures and the dedicated behind-the-scenes thinkers and organizers.
And Beale wasn't just thinking. He was communicating his ideas through writings like Right on Culture Freaks and Weather Yippie. These were widely circulated in underground newspapers, reaching a huge audience within the counterculture.
Getting the word out.
He even played a role in organizing some of the U.S. Rock Against Racism concerts, again demonstrating that intersection of cultural and political activism that was so central to the Yippie ethos.
Yeah, disseminating his writings through those alternative media channels was vital for spreading his ideas, fostering that shared understanding among activists. And his involvement in Rock Against Racism further illustrates his commitment to a broader vision of social justice, linking the cannabis fight to other struggles against oppression.
But perhaps his most significant contribution on a global scale, his role as the major organizer of the worldwide Global Million Marijuana March.
The GMM or MMM, yeah.
Huge.
It began in 1999 and continues to this day in hundreds of cities. This local New York event had this incredible global impact, largely thanks to Beale's vision and efforts.
It's quite a legacy.
It's really no wonder he's been called the Lenin of the marijuana movement.
Uh-huh. Well, the comparison might be a bit much, but it definitely emphasizes his long-term strategic thinking and uh, unwavering commitment to the cause.
And to top it off, he was even involved in organizing a marijuana smoke-in outside the Democratic Convention way back in Miami Beach in 1972 with the Yippies. His dedication to this cause just spans decades.
Decades of consistent activism. It's impressive. So as we look forward to the 2025 Pop Parade, it's just crystal clear that this isn't some spontaneous gathering. It's a direct continuation of a long, incredibly significant history of activism.
Deeply woven into the fabric of counterculture movements.
And driven by the tireless efforts of individuals like Dana Beale, the return to its original location in Washington Square Park feels like such a powerful and meaningful moment. A chance to reconnect with that vital history.
Indeed. The 2025 parade represents not just a contemporary call for cannabis legalization, but really a celebration of decades of activism and the enduring spirit of those who fought for this cause. And Dana Beale is just central to that entire journey.
Absolutely. And on that note, it really makes you think, doesn't it? How has the evolution of the Pop Parade, with all its twists and turns, its changes in location and focus, how has that mirrored the broader shifts in societal attitudes towards cannabis over the past, 50-plus years?
That's a fascinating question, a real reflection of changing times.
And what does the renewed involvement of original founders like Dana Beale signal about the future of this movement? And maybe the future of activism more broadly? It's definitely something to consider.
Food for thought, for sure.
Well, thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.
My pleasure. It's a story worth telling.